If you thought Corpy's suffering ended in the first film, this movie will prove you wrong. Sisu 2, 2025, takes us on a journey that is darker, more brutal, and completely unforgiving. This is not just a war film. This is a test of how far a man can endure when everything has been taken from him. The story takes place 2 years after the events of the first film, set shortly after the end of World War II. It unfolds in Karelia, a region that once belonged to Finland but later fell under Nazi control. It is here that a devastating tragedy occurred. Corpy's family was mercilessly slaughtered. By this time, Corpy had become incredibly wealthy from the gold he discovered. He left his homeland and returned to Karelia, hoping to find what remained of the life he had lost. When he arrived, he found his old house still standing, untouched by the destruction of war, as if frozen in time. Inside the house, Corpy discovered photographs of his wife and his 2 sons. The images awakened painful memories. He stood there in silence, consumed by grief, as long-buried rage slowly resurfaced. The story then shifts to a prison in Siberia, where a man is being held captive. He is summoned from his cell, and we learn his name is Igor. A high-ranking officer, General Rick, arrives to meet him. Rick explains that Igor once entered Finland with Nazi forces. During their retreat, his unit burned down multiple villages. In one of his most brutal acts, Igor slaughtered an entire family, a mother and her 2 young sons, mutilating them in a fit of uncontrollable rage. What he never realized was that the family he murdered belonged to Corpy, a legendary Finnish soldier rumored to have killed hundreds of enemies on his own. Now that Corpy has returned to the region, Rick understands the magnitude of the threat rising before them. He orders Igor to eliminate Corpy. If he refuses, Corpy will continue hunting them down, spilling even more blood. After weighing the risks, Igor finally accepts the mission. Meanwhile, Corpy is seen gathering logs from around his old home. He selects the usable timber, drags it with a rope pulley system, and loads it onto his truck. The work is exhausting, but Corpy has long grown accustomed to doing everything alone, without help from anyone. After gathering all the usable timber, Corpy burns the remaining damaged wood, sealing his resolve to build a new home. The memory of his family still lingers in his mind as he leaves the area and begins the long journey back, nearly 120 kilometers. Along the way, he occasionally glances at the photograph of his family tucked inside the truck's cabin. Before long, 2 officers stop his vehicle. Corpy immediately notices another truck parked behind them and realizes this is no routine inspection. One of the officers asks for his identification, then hands it to the man inside the rear truck, revealed to be Igor. Igor studies the logs loaded in Corpy's truck and sneers, remarking that for a man surrounded by legends, Corpy seems deeply attached to his old home. In that case, he says coldly, let it all end with that house. The officers begin to close in. One pours alcohol into a bottle to assemble a Molotov cocktail, while another quietly approaches from behind, pistol raised. Before they can act, Corpy swings open the truck door and shoots the nearest officer. He then throws the truck into reverse, slamming into the one attempting to attack from behind. Corpy tries to escape, but one officer manages to climb onto the back of the truck. Corpy fights him and eventually incapacitates him. Meanwhile, Igor deploys a large transport truck filled with soldiers to pursue Corpy. When one of the soldiers in Corpy's truck regains consciousness, Corpy realizes the weapon he's holding isn't loaded. He orders the soldier to reload the ammunition. Once it's done, Corpy seizes the weapon and pushes the truck to full speed, while Igor's convoy relentlessly closes in from behind. Reaching an open stretch of land, Corpy stops the truck and opens the door. The soldier attempts to flee, but Igor's forces arrive just in time and gun him down. While the guards focus their attention on him, Corpy suddenly steps out and counterattacks, killing them one by one, without mercy. Once the entire unit is eliminated, he turns his weapon toward the vehicle carrying Igor. The commander demands a gun from one of his men. But, before the weapon can change hands, Corpy shoots the soldier dead. Since Igor himself is unarmed, Corpy chooses not to kill him. At least, not yet. Instead, he shoots out the tires of Igor's vehicle and continues his escape. At this point, Corpy still has no idea that Igor is the man responsible for his family's murder. Furious, Igor grabs the radio and calls in his motorcycle unit, a fast-moving special squad, ordering them to hunt Corpy down. After changing the tire, Igor resumes the pursuit along the same route. Corpy attempts to change course to lose his pursuers, but Igor anticipates the move and deploys the motorcycle troops to cut him off. Within moments, the riders are right on Corpy's tail. He opens fire, but his bullets fail to penetrate the thick metal helmets they wear. The motorcycle unit returns fire. One shot strikes Corpy, causing the truck to swerve off the road and crash into the bushes. Despite his injury, Corpy regains control and forces the truck back onto the main road. The riders close in. One of them leaps onto the truck bed and tries to attack, but Corpy narrowly dodges. The attacker then grabs a rope hanging from the truck and swings back in for another strike. Corpy makes a sudden maneuver, throwing the soldier off balance just as Igor's vehicle barrels forward and crushes him under its wheels. Before the chaos can settle, another soldier aims his weapon at Corpy. Driving aggressively, Corpy triggers a violent collision that kills the attacker instantly. Still, one rider remains, climbing onto the cab roof and attempting to drag Corpy out of the truck. Corpy fights back with brutal force, throwing his attacker off balance until the man is flung away and left dangling from the rope wrapped around his body. Without hesitation, Corpy feeds the loose end of the rope into the engine. The sudden pull tightens the rope around the soldier's neck, killing him instantly. With that, the entire motorcycle unit is wiped out. Feeling the threat closing in, Igor orders his men to burn Corpy's logs. In retaliation, Corpy straps dynamite to the body of one enemy still trapped on the truck, then hurls the corpse toward Igor's vehicle. The commander barely manages to jump clear before a massive explosion completely destroys the car. Corpy then drives his truck deep into the forest, desperately trying to save what remains of his timber. He covers the burning logs with leaves and dirt, smothering the flames as best he can. Meanwhile, a furious Igor calls for the most lethal air support available to finish Corpy once and for all. Corpy stops briefly to inspect his cargo. Some of the logs are burned, but many are still usable. He pours water into the truck's radiator, fully aware that his journey is far from over. Before moving on, he feeds his loyal dog. Only then does he realize how badly he's been hit. The bullet from earlier has pierced deep through his cheek. Painful, but not enough to stop him. Suddenly, the roar of engines echoes overhead. Corpy looks up to see a low-flying aircraft streak past. Igor's forces are now hunting him from the sky. Without hesitation, Corpy lifts his dog into the cab and floors the accelerator, racing forward before the planes circle back. As Corpy speeds up, one of the aircraft dives and opens fire. He swerves violently to avoid the shots and spots a small house with a garage ahead. Without thinking twice, Corpy drives straight into the garage for cover, fully aware it won't protect him for long. Beyond the garage lies dense forest. Corpy grabs a large wooden plank and places it over the truck bed as makeshift armor. Above him, the enemy pilot executes a sharp maneuver and fires a missile, obliterating the garage in a massive blast. Corpy, however, has already escaped moments before the explosion. The aircraft continues to rain down gunfire, but the thick wooden plank absorbs much of the damage. Corpy plunges deeper into the forest, where the dense trees make it difficult for the pilots to track him. Seizing the opportunity, he pushes the truck even faster. Eventually, one pilot drops lower and manages to spot Corpy again. The aircraft banks sharply, lining up for another attack. But just as the pilot prepares to fire, Corpy slams the brakes and brings the truck to a sudden stop. With no sound of pursuit behind him, Corpy drives on until he finally emerges from the dense forest. He stops briefly and steps out of the truck, scanning the sky to make sure the second aircraft is no longer nearby. Believing the danger has passed, he resumes driving along the edge of an open field. That's when the aircraft suddenly locates him. The plane dives low and opens fire once again, but this time, the pilot has run out of ammunition. Fueled by rage, the pilot makes a desperate decision. He aims the aircraft directly into Corpy's path. After releasing his seatbelt, he leaps from the cockpit at the last second. Reacting instantly, Corpy cuts the bindings holding the logs, slams the brakes, and lets the entire load spill onto the road. The jet crashes into the pile of timber, loses control, and erupts in a thunderous explosion. Above it all, the pilot drifts downward beneath a parachute. Corpy begins gathering his scattered logs, but before he can finish, the pilot lands and opens fire on him. Exhausted and done with running, Corpy walks toward the man without fear. Suddenly, the pilot starts laughing, staring past Corpy at something behind him. Corpy turns and sees a massive bomber approaching in the distance. Without hesitation, Corpy reloads the logs, secures the truck bed, and accelerates at full speed. The pilot, confident now, believes Corpy's fate is sealed, but the bomber releases its payload recklessly. Bombs that don't just target Corpy's truck, but nearly kill the pilot himself. A series of massive explosions rock the entire area. Corpy swerves violently to avoid the blasts, then steers straight toward the water. Beneath the surface, he struggles to hold his breath. He pushes his dog to safety first, then swims away as the truck and its cargo sink beneath the waves. From below, Corpy dives again and cuts the ropes binding the logs. Freed, the timber rockets upward toward the surface, but in that moment, Corpy loses consciousness underwater. The floating logs carry his body upward. His dog searches frantically until one of the logs pushes Corpy back to the surface, saving his life. Slowly, Corpy regains consciousness. He survives. So does his loyal dog. And miraculously, so do the logs. As dusk begins to fall, Igor arrives at the scene aboard a boat. He asks what was found at the bottom of the water. The guards report that Corpy's truck has sunk, but there is no sign of a body. That's when they realize the truth. Corpy has escaped. Igor responds calmly, "I didn't think he'd be taken down that easily." But his journey to Finland is far from over. Elsewhere, under the cover of night, Corpy binds his remaining logs together and builds a raft. With his dog beside him, he crosses the water and reaches the shore. As he steps onto land, he spots an old tank not far from the coastline. Inside the armored vehicle, he discovers several weapons. One by one, Corpy installs them, preparing himself for the next stage of the fight. Not far away lies the Soviet-Finnish border. Igor has already arrived and is waiting, knowing there is only a single route Corpy can take. Before long, he hears the sound he's been anticipating. Corpy is coming. Corpy emerges, driving the tank with logs strapped tightly on top. The moment Igor's forces realize Corpy is inside an armored vehicle, they move into attack formation. Corpy grips the controls, activates the cannon, and drives straight forward. Enemy fire rains down on him. But instead of retreating, Corpy ignites a fuel trail he had prepared behind the tank, setting the ground ablaze. At full speed, he charges ahead. The explosives he planted detonate in succession, and the massive blast launches the tank over the border, crashing into Finnish territory. Just as Corpy attempts to continue, the tank's track snaps, trapping him inside. Seeing this, Igor erupts in triumph. Bloodied and exhausted, Corpy struggles to stay conscious. He pulls out his knife, separates the blade from its wooden handle, and makes sure his dog exits the tank first. The dog crosses the border and reaches Finland safely. Corpy crawls out next, but Igor captures him before he can escape. Before Igor can finish him, UK arrives with his men. They want Corpy alive. Dragging Corpy's broken body, Igor hands him over to Vurek. Before leaving, Igor smirks and says, "There's no place like home," then kicks Corpy unconscious. As night falls, Corpy's body is loaded onto a train bound for Russia. He is hung upside down and beaten repeatedly during the journey, his blood dripping onto the floor of the railcar. Igor leans in and whispers, "Corpy, the legend of Finland. You may not remember me, but I'm the one who shaped you. I've slaughtered thousands of women and children, and I've forgotten almost all of them. Sometimes I still hear their screams, but there's one boy I can never forget. When I came to your home to kill your wife and sons, that boy stabbed me. The wound nearly blinded me. I knew he was from your house. The wood was the same. That boy was your son. He was brave, just like you. You should be proud." Igor's voice turns cold. "In my rage, I butchered him, his mother, and his brother. I tore their bodies apart and fed them to my dogs. He never should have reopened that wound. But now, Corpy's buried fury has been fully awakened." Igor moves closer and snarls, "I was never afraid of you. It was my cowardly men who feared you. And now, you'll be tortured for days. I killed your family, and you'll rot in our prison until you die." With that, Igor turns and walks away, leaving Corpy broken, but alive. Corpy hangs upside down, his body consumed by seething rage. He hooks his legs and summons every ounce of strength to snap the rope restraining him. His body crashes hard onto the floor of the railcar. The impact echoes through the train, drawing the guards closer. They even joke among themselves, betting on who will get to kill him. Earlier, Corpy had hidden the blade of his knife beneath folds of skin after separating it from its wooden handle. The moment the first guard steps inside, Corpy lunges forward, overpowering him and torturing him to death. The second guard, alerted by the noise, opens the door and finds his comrade brutally slain. As he steps inside, Corpy kills him without mercy. The third guard immediately realizes that his companions have died in a horrifying way. Frozen with fear, he chooses to leap from the moving train rather than suffer the same fate. Corpy discards the weapons taken from the guards and begins preparing for his revenge. Meanwhile, Igor is forced to sit through a formal dinner with Vurek and several generals, a moment he despises. He demands his payment so he can leave immediately, but Vurek insists he stay and enjoy the feast first. They drink excessively, and with every glass, Igor grows more restless and enraged. At the same time, Corpy crawls into another railcar where his log cargo has been loaded. He moves in total silence and spots a soldier sleeping soundly. When another soldier begins to stir, Corpy slips into the next car unnoticed. A soldier stepping outside to relieve himself suddenly sees Corpy. Before he can scream, Corpy hurls his axe. The weapon flies silently through the air and ends the man's life instantly. Moments later, another soldier notices Corpy's presence. Without hesitation, Corpy stabs him and kills him on the spot. Most of the troops remain fast asleep. Corpy slowly crawls toward the front of the train. But then, a soldier drops a bottle of liquor. The shattering glass explodes in noise, triggering chaos. At the same time, more soldiers begin to wake up, disturbed by strange sounds coming from the rear, where their comrades already lie dead. Corpy quickly hides beneath a storage rack. Shards of broken glass slice into his skin as he crawls. At one point, his hand is caught in a rat trap. The unnatural noises continue, and more soldiers begin to realize that something horrifying is unfolding aboard the train. As the situation spirals further into chaos, Corpy grips his axe and pushes forward. He climbs out of the lower compartment, seals the door tightly behind him, and peeks into the next railcar. Several officers are still awake inside. Realizing a direct approach would be suicide, Corpy climbs onto the roof of the train and sprints toward the front. But fate turns against him. A metal pipe slams into his body, sending him crashing straight down into a compartment packed with officers. The soldiers swarm immediately, but Corpy uses the force of his fall to strike back, crushing them one by one. He seizes a machine gun and unleashes a merciless barrage, mowing down every guard in sight. The gunfire roars through the length of the train, echoing all the way to the car where Igor is hiding. In an instant, Igor knows exactly who is coming. After clearing the entire compartment, Corpy steps out, ready to face Igor at last. Instead, he is met with nothing but a farewell. Igor has already fled. Corpy's eyes catch a massive object concealed behind a curtain. He pulls it aside and reveals a hidden missile. Elsewhere, Igor storms back to Vurek. The moment he enters the room, he stabs one officer, grabs a pistol, and massacres everyone inside without hesitation. When he raises the gun toward Vurek, the man reveals the money Igor has been demanding all along. Igor smirks and says calmly, "This is the payment." He then shoots Vurek dead and sits down to drink, utterly unfazed. Moments later, other troops break down the door. They discover the train has stopped and Corpy is gone, fleeing at full speed with a missile in tow. Igor stares at the money with satisfaction. Suddenly, the entire room begins to shake violently. A missile streaks in from the distance. Igor instantly realizes what's happening. Corpy appears, riding the missile itself. As he reaches the train, Corpy cuts the engine and launches himself straight at Igor, attacking with every ounce of rage he has been holding back. Igor fights back fiercely, pummeling Corpy again and again. Already wounded and exhausted, Corpy weakens, allowing Igor to pin him to the ground and snatch the money, but Corpy refuses to stay down. The brutal fight continues. Igor grips him, nearly finishing him off. In a moment of desperation, Corpy grabs a fork and drives it into Igor's leg. Igor retaliates savagely, even trying to choke Corpy to death. But once again, Corpy manages to knock him down. Consumed by fury, Igor grabs an iron rod and beats Corpy relentlessly, leaving him drenched in blood. Mocking him, Igor sneers, "I thought if you came for revenge, you'd at least bring something spectacular." With that, Igor shoves Corpy out of the rail car. The missile is still attached to the train. Suddenly, Corpy realizes something. Igor steps forward and asks if Corpy has any final words. In response, Corpy spits out a single screw, the very bolt that had been holding the missile to the train's frame. In an instant, the missile breaks free and launches forward, racing straight toward Igor. For a brief, terrifying moment, it stops, suspended in midair right in front of him. Meanwhile, Corpy has already detached the plow mechanism at the rear of the missile, leaving himself far behind. Igor survives the initial moment and exhales in relief, but that relief lasts only seconds. The missile suddenly reactivates, surging forward and slamming directly into his face. From a distance, Corpy watches a massive fireball rise into the sky. He knows Igor's end has come, and it is a brutal one. The sight brings him a quiet sense of closure, the final release after all the suffering he has endured. 2 days later, at a small station near the Finnish border, several guards are resting when they hear footsteps approaching. Alert, they raise their weapons and investigate the sound. What they see is Corpy, walking calmly, carrying the same stack of timber he once fought so hard to save. The guards stop him and ask for identification. As they read the name on his papers, they fall silent. They realize the man standing before them is Corpy. the legendary figure whose story has already begun to spread. Without hesitation, they salute him. Days later, Corpy is seen building a small house near the border, accompanied by his loyal dog. Using the timber he saved, he begins to rebuild his life. His wounds slowly heal, and so does his spirit. One day, as he works, his dog suddenly starts barking. Corpy braces himself for danger, but instead, a group of villagers from nearby approaches. At first, he assumes trouble has followed him again. Then one of them speaks softly. "For work this big, you need help. We came to lend a hand." The words strike Corpy deeply. It has been a long time since anyone offered him kindness. As the villagers notice tears forming in his eyes, they say nothing more. They simply begin helping. Together, they build the house, without fear, without expectation. Corpy weeps openly, rediscovering a piece of his humanity he thought was long gone. In the final moments of the credits, we see the villagers continuing to help Corpy until the house stands complete and strong. And that is where this story ends.